Welcome back to Uniquely Wired Podcast. I'm your host, Anani, and I am so happy that you're here once again listening to another episode of season one, which, y'all, we are almost done with season one. It is crazy. We will be taking a break around the Christmas time, and then we'll be coming back with season two come the new year. But I am just so thrilled to have this very special soul, okay? Because she's just everything on the podcast today, all the way from the UK. Y'all, this is crazy. Like, I'm just so grateful. Which, by the way, shout out to all my UK listeners and my people in Australia. Like, what? I was looking at my statistics and I'm like, people from the UK and Australia are listening. Oh, and of course, Puerto Rico. Can't forget. My place. But yes, God is so good, and I'm just grateful that you guys can be here and get the knowledge from other moms and just other experts that have been in this journey. So I'm gonna call her Swa because that's how I know how to say her name. And I want her to introduce herself and tell us a little bit about her and what she is currently doing. And of course, tell us about her beautiful girls. So, Swa, you could go right ahead and introduce yourself.
Thank you so much, Nanny, and thank you so much for having me. It's my first time ever doing something like this, so bear with me if I'm a bit nervous. But yes, thank you for having me. My name is Swa. The full name is actually Owuswa, but Swa is what I am known as. And I've lived in the UK for the last 25 years, and I'm married to an amazing man. His name is Michael, and I also am mother to three daughters. My eldest is 18, and I have two other girls, Eden Rose, who you've met, and Eva Rain, who is 4. And my younger two girls both have autism. So that's me in a nutshell.
Yes, I love that. And of course, you're a working mom.
I am, yes, of course. How could I forget that?
Yes, she is a very busy woman, which right now, you guys, here in PA, it's almost 12 o'clock. So I'm guessing over there it's almost 5.
Almost 5, yes.
Yeah, so there's a big chunk of a difference. Like, I feel like my day is just getting started and her day is almost coming to an end. But we
But
know as autism moms, like
never
it's
ends.
almost like you're up 24 hours every single day.
And you know that was my
um,
reality, Nanny. No
yes.
sleep.
Yes. No, I understand. I remember when Eliana wasn't able to sleep for a long time. That was frustrating. Like, people don't talk about the frustrations that comes through that. So the fact that you're here today, sis, thank you. Thank you, because I know you say you had a very rough night and I felt so bad. I was like, "Oh my God, I want to reschedule, but you're
No,
here
that's right.
and we're
See?
getting through it and we know this is going to be a blessing." So,
Amen.
let me just say, because I did forget to mention, this episode, we are going to focus on talking about raising autistic siblings, and how challenging that can be, the joys that come with it. So I feel like there's just a array of emotions that come with raising autistic, siblings. So if you will share a little bit about your personal journey, raising Eden and Everrain, which I love that name. I think it's so beautiful. Yeah, so just share a little bit about that journey in specific, because I know Eden is how old?
Eden's 13, so she's nearly
She's
14.
13, and then Everrain is, I believe, 4, right?
Yes, there's a big gap.
So yeah. So tell us, let's start off with Eden, I guess. When was she diagnosed and how did you go about that? Like, how did you know this?
Right. So yes, do you know what? Eden was diagnosed at 3, and this was a good 10 years ago. So I knew nothing about autism, nothing. When I think back to where I was back then, hearing those words, and the way we got to find out, we have an older daughter who is neurotypical. And so naturally, we had another child to compare, Eden to, right? When it came to just milestones, talking, we realized that she was throwing a lot of tantrums. We had lots of struggles again with sleeping. She was extremely fussy. I mean, not the normal kind of fussy. You couldn't, we were just on beige foods for the majority of the time. There were all these things, but I never once thought that it could be. I mean, I didn't even know about autism. So I remember she attended my one of my sister's birthday parties, and I wasn't there, and she happened to be interacting with an older lady, an older Ghanaian lady, and the lady sort of pulls my sister aside and says, "Look, I have twin grandchildren, and I think you're, whoever this child is." And my sister says, "Oh, it's my niece." And she says, "Well, I'm pretty sure she has autism." So my sister actually calls me and says, "This is what the lady shared with me." And I was taken aback. I didn't understand what it meant. But it was interesting to me at that point that all the things that we could see in Eden that we thought were very unique, I mean, still very unique to her, but we didn't think anything of it, right? So it was interesting to see that someone else could also see those things, and for them, they could interpret it and they could see it and link it to this condition. So we enrolled her in this nursery school, and coincidentally, we didn't even know at the time that the school happened to be um, experts. They had like a provision within the school that had expert autism sort of support built in. And so one of the teachers there, just again, Eden was there barely maybe a few weeks, and she pulled us aside and said, "I'm pretty sure your daughter has is autistic." So it was like a baptism of fire, going through, educating ourselves on what autism means, just trying to understand the level of support that she needed. It was sort of everything happening at the same time, as I'm sure you you can imagine. But yeah, what I can also say, Nanny, is that because it was 10 years ago, and also based on how overwhelming it was, like I'm always in awe within this community when I hear people who speak so specifically to every aspect of the diagnostic process. I honestly can't remember a lot of it. And I think part of it is because it was traumatizing, right? And so you kind of push that to the back of your psyche. Um, and also it was quite some time ago as well. So yeah, it was really overwhelming. It was literally just getting past it day at a time, and just doing the best we could in terms of advocating for her.
Wow, that's kind of intense. Because
It
like you
was,
said, it's been so long ago. And not only that, like I don't know how it is down in the UK when it comes to like the help and the support, but it seems like God already knew like this is the place where she's gonna be at.
yeah,
Isn't that crazy? Like it's that's crazy to me. Um so now your little one is born, right? Fast forward, and she gets diagnosed as well. Very
right,
early on, I'm guessing, because you at this point you already know the signs. You're somewhat much more familiar than you were when Eden was showing signs that you didn't know. They were signs of autism. Now we fast forward into this, and now they're both autistic. You're raising both of them. Like, how is that? Because if you guys are new here, by the way, those that are listening, um, I have two kids and they're both autistic. And in my case, it's a girl and a boy. You have
mm,
two girls.
right.
So how are you dealing with that? How are you able to, I guess just get through your days with two autistic girls?
Right. I'm gonna take a sip before I answer that question because God knows,
Go right ahead.
Nanny, the
I wish
struggle.
I had a little like coffee sound just to put right
Right.
there.
Right. It's sorry, I don't know if you can hear my notifications going. Can you?
Yeah, I could hear them a little bit. I don't know if
Okay.
you're able to turn them
Yes.
off. Y'all, this is live.
Apologies. Yeah, it was
It's
distracting me a
okay.
little.
It's okay.
Figure out how to turn that down. Okay. Yes. So look, raising more than one child, and I only actually got to know that there's a term for families who have more than one children with autism, and where apparently we're called multiplex families. And yeah, I found that out a few days ago. And I know you're familiar, more than likely, Nanny, with Emily Pearl Kingsley's work, where I think she wrote a poem about Welcome to Holland, where she explains basically
I
what
think
it's
I've
like.
seen
You have?
heard of that, but I
Right.
haven't actually looked into it, which
I
if you
see.
can send me the information when you know,
Absolutely.
later on.
Absolutely. For anyone who isn't really aware, just to quickly summarize, it's a really beautiful poem, a little controversial because some people feel like her depiction of what it's like to raise a child with autism might be trivializing it, or it's, almost glamorizing it to some extent. But at the end of the day, it's her reality, right? And I think that's what we need to be conscious of. We can only speak to what our personal realities are. And what she's saying in Welcome to Holland is that she, all her life had been looking forward to traveling to Italy. She had bought a, plane ticket to get to Italy. She'd bought all the guidebooks. She was looking forward to going to Venice, doing all the lovely things, and Naples, etc. And she planned that beautiful trip. And then she gets on the plane, they land finally, and the air stewardess mentions when they land, the air stewardess just says, "Welcome to Holland." And so she's thinking, what is going on? Hang on, this is a mistake. I'm supposed to be in Italy. And they're like, well, I'm sorry, you're here in Holland now. You're going to have to, you know, acclimatize to this new environment. And by the way, there's nothing wrong with Holland. Holland is a beautiful, the Netherlands is a beautiful country in itself, but that's not where she had planned to go, right? And so she's now having to buy new guidebooks about Holland. She's now having to learn this new language, very different from the language that she's used to. And, finding a new way of living in this new place that she never envisaged for herself. And I think that's a really interesting way to describe what it's like to find yourself in this space, of being a parent of a child who has autism. Now, the reason I bring this up to your question, Nanny, is because I was thinking, okay, when you have more than one child with autism, I would like to create almost like a sequel to Welcome to Holland, right? Where this time is Welcome to Belgium. So So again, you've been through that experience. You're now settled in Holland. You're getting used to the language. You're taking, the nice little wins, the big wins. You're taking it all in your stride, and then you get yet another opportunity to go to Italy. So you're like, okay, a bit of anxiety because you're like, I can't have this happen again. This time we're getting to Italy, come what may. And then, to cut a long story short, again, you land and the stewardess says, "Welcome to Belgium." You're like, no, someone must be playing a horrible, you know, trick or game on me. There is no way that this has happened twice. There is no way that I found myself in a destination that I know nothing about. And when I say nothing about, yes, of course, they're both similar countries, but as we know with autism, it's a spectrum. And so you see one child with autism and you've seen one child with autism. So, yes,
Preach. Yeah,
yeah,
sorry. I just had to be like, preach. Yes, that is true. No, especially for those that are just starting this journey, it's good for them to understand that.
yeah,
Because sometimes we're like, well, let's say I hang out with you and Everrain and Jacob, and I'm like, but wait, how come she's autistic and she's not doing this that my son is doing? You know what I mean? And
yeah,
we can do this, especially when we're in public places with other children who
right.
may possibly have the same disability. So that's crazy. Yeah.
That so it's in short, you are. I think we're in control as parents of our own children of the narrative, how we present autism out to whether it's our friends and our family, because you actually realize a lot of people, and why would they be? A lot of people are quite ignorant to what autism actually means, right? And our day to day, our challenges, but also actually our triumphs and the, because it's definitely not all challenge and pain. And that's a picture I do not ever want to paint. And so, yes, Nani, in a very roundabout way to your question, it's it's an enlightening experience. It is, uh, I would say, life changing, of course, because everything that you have planned in your mind, what you've envisaged for your future to look like, changes, right? And you have to, the analogy that Emily Pearl Kingsley paints, you have to make a decision for yourself as to whether you're going to stay in this place of disappointment and, you know, and just get to that stage, no matter how long it takes you, but to get to that stage of acceptance, because it's at that point where you can then really begin to accept all the positive, all the great things that there are in all of our children. Um, and once you're at that point, I think that there is beauty in it, right? We definitely, the challenges don't go away, of course. Challenges like, sleeplessness, you're dealing with medical challenges, in our situation, we're dealing with lots and lots of, you know, misbehavior, sensory sensitivities, the whole range. And it's tough, but again, like I said, there are beautiful moments if you can just pause and take a step back and take those moments in. So, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you. I think that is so true. I look at Jacob and they're so different. I mean, just gender alone, it's challenging
Right.
because I'm here thinking, okay, I need to potty train him soon, but I only know how to potty train a girl.
Right.
So like, God, I'm gonna need you to make a way because I gotta potty train him, right? So I'm grateful that I've met moms that have boys, that
Mm,
are autistic. And I'm like, okay, I need all y'all tips because
right.
I'm good with my girl. She's set. My son now. So it's
Yeah.
almost like you think you're finished, but yet you're starting all over again.
Absolutely.
And I'm
Yeah.
sure, I mean, for you, it's been even longer of a
Exactly.
difference.
Exactly. Because
Like
I was going to
mine's are
say,
just, yeah, like
yeah,
my daughter is only 7 and my son is 4. So it's like what, almost exactly 3 years apart.
right.
With you guys, Eden
Yeah.
and Everrain is like,
Yeah.
whoa, it's a big
Oh, it
chunk.
is. It's a huge,
Yeah.
yeah,
Now,
it
may
is.
I ask, did you wait that long specifically because of Eden's diagnosis, or
Good
was it
question.
just like, it just kind of
Yeah.
happened?
Yeah. No, do you know what? It's a bit of both. So Eden,
Okay.
for the longest time, the Eden that we see now, and I think it's really interesting when you look on social media and how people or children present, right? When you meet Eden in person, the Eden you see now is very, very different, right? Which is what gives us a lot of hope because it's very, very different, miles apart from Eden at the beginning of her diagnosis, etc. And so for a long time, we felt like she was years behind in terms of her development. And so we felt like we had a baby, really, for a really, really long time. And all of our time, all of our efforts were just invested in her. And we couldn't think for a second of bringing another child into the world. And we had an older child already who's neurotypical. And we just felt it's not fair on her. So much time is being spent on Eden. And then by some miracle, by immaculate conception somehow, 10 years later, yeah, I get pregnant with Everrain. And what's interesting, Nanny, is I I was ignorant to the fact that when you have a child with autism, the probability of having another child with autism increases. I didn't know that. Not to say it would have changed anything, but at least I guess what it would have changed is I would have gone into the pregnancy more aware, and sort of preparing myself of the possibility of that being the case. But I was shell shocked, not in a good way, when we begun to see similar traits in Everrain when she was about, I would say, 1.5. And I just thought, and this is an honest, safe space, right? So I can say, I just thought this
Yes, please.
cannot be happening again. Like, God, there is no way that I'm here again. We're only now beginning to figure out how to manage and get Eden into a really good place, even though there are challenges, of course, all the time. But yeah, it was really, really shocking, really shocking.
Uh, that is and it's interesting because I love hearing your perspective because for me, I remember being pregnant with Jacob. And I'm sorry, rewind. Before I found out I was pregnant with him, I wasn't like not trying to have another child. It was just kind of like I wanted to be optimistic. And I was like, I grew up with 3 brothers, and I don't want my child to be like, why you never gave me a sibling, mom? I don't want her to eventually grow up and be like, well, why don't I have a brother or a sister? Right? Because I do feel like eventually they will question you in their own way, but they will. And I didn't want to live with that guilt. But at the same time, realistically speaking, the inside of me was like, what if this child is also autistic? Is it going to be the same journey? Because we know it's different every time.
Oh yeah,
I mean, we can speak for two, but but we just know it's different.
it's different.
So
It's very
it was
different.
it was kind of like those things that I would tell my husband, well, I don't think it will be fair for her. And he would tell me, like, are you sure? We would just go back and forth. Boom, get pregnant with Jacob. Like I said, it wasn't nothing like, oh, we're gonna try today. Like, I'm
Right,
ovulating today, honey. We
right,
we doing this. No, we were just with the flow, just
right.
naturally. And it happens. And I was grateful. Number one, it was gonna be a boy. I always dreamed like girl and boy. I think it's just
Yeah,
perfect to and through. Like that was my
yeah,
mentality the whole time. Even prior to getting married, and God was just pleased enough to give me both of them, to
right.
be on the spectrum. But yeah, I noticed different things on Jacob. Yet there were similarities in their early signs, but and now as he's getting older, I see differences. And just the
Mm,
sensory challenges alone are like off the hook because Eliana has sensory processing disorder as well, but it's not as severe as Jacob's. Like his sensory is like, whew,
Nanny, yes, I can fully relate because I thought I knew a thing or two about sensory processing with Eden until I had Everrain. And the thing is, what the real challenge for me, and Eden even on social media and the page she has on Instagram is I'm conscious she's a teenager, right? And you also have to really toe this line of making sure that you're also um supporting and you're keeping your child's dignity intact, right? Because there are things, and I wanted to be as truthful a representation of her as possible, but it's really tricky to navigate because there are aspects that she has friends who are on her page, and we don't want to. Sometimes she'll say, "Mummy, I don't know if I want to share that," so we have to pull back from that. But I guess I say all of that to say that Eden still has challenges that when I speak to friends about, they're like, really? I mean, when you hear her speak, and you would never ever think that she isn't able to do some of these really basic things yet. Now that's Eden. And then when we had Everrain, Nanny, I'm telling you, like, mind blown about the extent of her sensory processing needs. Like, it's the biggest barrier, aside from the fact that she's completely nonverbal. It's the biggest barrier to just her existence. Like it touches everything, right? The stimming is constant from when she wakes up. She's got her hand over her ears. She's
Oh my
constantly
gosh.
rocking back and forth. She is like last night, she was screaming for hours and hours on end, and obviously being nonverbal, she can't tell us what it is. And we're doing the rocking, we're doing the bouncing, we're doing all of it. And still, right? But yeah, sensory processing is just, for me, that's probably one of the biggest challenges to manage, because I feel, again, it impacts everything in the child.
Yeah, and of course I'm getting emotional talking about this. Only because, I think like you just said, that's one of the biggest barriers for Jacob per se.
Mhm.
Um, and it's interesting, what you're saying, like your daughter's constantly moving. Jacob cannot stay still.
Mhm.
Like he sits on the couch and will rock back and forth all day long.
Right.
And
Yeah.
grinding his teeth is a way of him stimming. He finds really good satisfaction in doing that.
Okay.
While it drives me crazy. I'm talking about I'm already like somewhere on another planet because it's so bad. Like the grinding, it's very severe. Brushing teeth is very difficult. And I know, I had an episode, 2 episodes ago, I believe, on sensory. And, we were discussing about this. Like, it's challenging. It affects a lot of our children's senses. And the world doesn't understand this. And this is why we talk about this publicly, so it can get all across the world and families can understand that they are not alone, that, these are patches that we're all going to step on. Like we're just going to step on those hard patches. Even if
Yes.
we don't want to, we're going to step on them.
Yes.
And it's going
Absolutely.
to make us resilient. It's going to make us resilient. I think autism moms, we are really the definition of resilience because we don't give up. We can't give up.
No, we can't. No, it's not an
We
option.
can't. So would you
It.
say that, I know my next question would be, what are some unique challenges, with raising your two autistic daughters
Mhm.
and also your neurotypical child? Like, I mean, granted, she is older.
Yes.
So I don't know if there is, like, is it a little easier versus if she was younger?
Right.
Or is this still challenging? Because, I mean, she's now
Yeah.
pretty much an adult,
Exactly. Yes. Well,
but she still wants, mom and dad. I'm sure she still craves that relationship. So if you could
absolutely.
talk a little bit more about that.
Sure. I don't think there's ever, I'm going to sit up here and say balance and, nanny, it doesn't exist. I mean, it's impossible, right? In as much as we strive as much as we can to create a decent enough balance so one child doesn't feel like all of the time is invested in another. We're only human. At the end of the day, the child who has the most needs, more often than not, is the child you're going to spend the most time and effort on. That's what we do. And for us, in our unique situation, because the child who has the most needs is also the youngest, um, it just so happens that, yes, we end up spending the most time with her. You're right. My eldest being 18, she's an adult now. Um, and with her being neurotypical, the advantage of that is she really is able to help and support. She's had that experience with Eden growing up. And we're always very conscious, right, of not overburdening her as well, because she's, in her own right, she has the right to exist as a child and do the normal things that teenagers do. And we don't want to burden her with that. But on the flip side, what we realize is that we've raised this very nurturing, empathetic human being who, wherever in the world she goes, she has a much deeper understanding and an appreciation for people, right? And so I choose to see, no matter the challenges, no matter the part she plays in helping us raise her sisters, at the end of the day, we're raising someone who I believe is going to walk through this world and make it a better place, because she's, she has this empathetic, nurturing spirit. But
Yes.
Nanny, the challenges, I mean, with raising two children on the spectrum, I would say are it's everything times two, right? So all the challenges that you have with one child who has autism, when you have two, it doubles. Whether it's financially, in terms of all the support services that you need to provide for your child, the cost is times two. Whether it's the time that you're spending supporting them with any kind of activity, it's times two, depending on where they are in, in different stages. It is, if it's sleeplessness, guess what? It's times two, because while Ever is screaming down here and not sleeping, Eden's up there really sensitive to sound. And so the slightest thing, a penny drops and she's up, and then she can't sleep as well. So it's all of that times two. And then I think the other challenge is also that, because we know that these children are very, very different. My, Eden Rose and Everrain are really, really different. Things that, to give you an example, Eden is really, really sensitive to sound, like screeching noises on the train or in a tube. Like, she gets really agitated and anxious. Everrain, on the other hand, is not at all sensitive to sound. So there's a lot of screaming and so they trigger each other a lot. There's
Wait, I have to like jump into this. I relate to that. Like, that is my situation. It's, Jacob is like so loud. I'm talking about obnoxiously loud. And he's happy. Like, these are happy sounds. But then you have Eliana, who's like, nope, I'd rather be isolated in a room with my tablet. She's in her world. She could be there literally the entire day, and she's done it. You do feel sometimes like you're neglecting that child, but guess what? That is her safe space. And I've had to learn, if that's what makes her happy, like, that's what she finds that it's keeping her safe. She's away from the noise. She's away from, because not even the canceling headphones, it's helping it. Like, he's just too much of energy for her. And so that's very interesting that, you're saying that. Now, with me too, Jacob sleeps with the little lullaby, little sound like shh, and it's like the forest. Eliana too. Like, she's okay with sleeping with that. Her thing is just sudden noises, sudden sounds. Like, if he screams right now and she's just chilling, you catch her off guard. If I'm trying to do homework with her and he's around, it's too much for her. I have to put him in his room. And that is so hard, because it's like, I don't want them to be separated. But if that's what's helping them, like, I have to do what I have to do, right?
Absolutely. And we're only one. I mean, yes, we have partners who are supportive, etc. But at the end of the day, when you're dealing with whatever the challenge is or whatever the situation is, you're one person, right? Like, I'll give you a scenario recently where Eden had quite a number of challenges with walking, because having tiptoe walking all her life, we'd noticed that her Achilles tendon had shortened. So she's now like really struggling, limping when she walks, and having to do physio, etc. And I remember getting a call, this was about 2 weeks ago, from her school saying, look, really sorry, Mr. Che, but Eden's back in the office. She's really struggling. She's in pain. She can't walk. Can you pick her up? And Nanny, as I'm speaking to the school, I just look over and I see my daughter Everrain having a seizure. And I'm just thinking, I'm on the phone and I'm like, I'm sorry, hold on. I'm in full panic mode, you know, trying to figure out, obviously I need to get the school off the phone. I need to get my eye on the clock and, administer medication and call an ambulance. And So I'm just in this place. You don't even have the presence of mind to even take a step back and and even think, right? You're an autopilot doing what you need to do. But once I'd gotten over, once Everine had come out of that and, she was okay. And then I called the school back and they were like, yes, Eden is still here. And I just broke down in that moment. I thought, how is this happening at the same time? Like, how am I supposed to manage a child who needs to be picked up because she's struggling and a child who's had a seat? How? So in those moments, in the reality of what it really means, in the reality of what it really means, but in the reality of our situations, because we know that the spectrum isn't the same, um, and different children have different experiences, it really is a challenge. Just that balancing act, making sure that you're there for both children. It's tough. It really is. And I'd love to say that I found the balance, but I take it a day at a
Right.
time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, and that's tough, the fact that you don't know when they're going to call you, excuse me, from eating school and your little one is having a seizure. Like that's scary. I remember you telling me you were on the road, I believe, and she was having a seizure too. Like that I can't even, and I salute you for that, because that it really takes a village. It really takes a village, and you are that for your girls, even for your eldest. So I know you're doing a fantastic job. And I know we hear these things, from the other people. And I know you tell me as well. And, we try to encourage each other and uplift each other with these words. But deep down, like, I know these past few weeks and months, I should say, if I'm honest, like it's just been overwhelming. I'm fighting for my daughter to get what she really needs. And I just think about the moms that have to constantly do this because they won't give in. They won't provide these services for their child. And you just feel the weight. You feel the weight and you kind of become isolated because you're like, nobody's going to get it. You don't want to burden another autism mom because she already has her challenges and situations that you just feel like, I don't want to burden nobody. So therefore I'm shutting down and that's it. It's just me and my thoughts. And it's hard. It's hard. And I'm the type of person, I journal, whenever I'm just deep in my thoughts, and it helps me. It helps me. So I appreciate, your vulnerability to share um that part, because that's rough. And I'm sure that guilt comes in because you're now like, okay, well, I just left Eden knowing that they just told me exactly that I need to go and get her and she's in pain while I have my 4-year-old who's having a whole seizure. Like, okay, at that moment, you want to like break yourself in half, but you can't,
Yeah. Yeah,
right? So
exactly.
it's hard.
It is. It
That's
is.
it. And we don't want nobody to feel pity for us, please. We're not
No,
trying to do a pity party, okay?
no,
That's not why we are
no,
saying this for you to feel bad. No.
no.
We are just we really just want other families in our situation to know that they're not alone. Like I personally don't deal with the medical aspect of it when it comes to like medications, and I know there's parents out there that their kids are autistic and also have G-tube feeding, like,
Huh?
or ADHD and autism, or
Right.
in your case your daughter has seizures and is also autistic. Like, I'm not in that specific position, but the fact that we can still be here for each other and be that community to uplift each other and to be reminded that we are not alone in this journey. We're
Yes,
not.
absolutely. I mean, look, since becoming, thankfully, through social media, part of this community, meeting you, attending the Moments of Joy Fest, right? And just having that privilege to meet the amazing women. Because, like you said, when you're going through and when you're managing all the challenges day by day, it's really hard to lift your head up. And of course, listen, like you said, it's not a pity party and it's not all challenges either. I have fantastic days, right? I have great days where I know what I'm doing, I've got a plan, the girls are happy, they're well fed, we're going out. But there are other days, and on those days I give myself full grace, and I do what I need to do to keep the family going. But there are other days where it's just not, I'm just not there. And in those days also I give myself grace. And so to your point, it is challenging, yes, but it's so, so important in those moments, like you said, to do what we're doing. Like to seek out that community, to share your experience with other parents, because like you said, not that it's intentional, but a lot of the people, family and friends, there's just no real understanding of what we go through. And like you said, we don't want to burden them. I don't always want the only conversation we have when I meet my friends is to talk about my children, right? Because I find myself
Yes.
doing that. Like I find myself doing that.
Right. I do the same thing though. I do the
You?
same thing. I'll meet with a mom that maybe, her children are neurotypical. And I'll jump in and if they ask me, I feel like that open door that it's like, okay, well, I guess they want to hear about it. So let's get really deep into it because I want to be real with you, right? But at the same time, I'm also the type of friend that I'm like, I want to listen to you and I want to know what's going on with you because I want to feel like, okay, I am supporting you in that season of your life that you may be in, right? Um, and that's me. I'm that friend that I'm like, yep, just pour it into me. Just what's going on? Like, I'm here for you. What can I do for you? Like, I'll be there. I'll get this for you. Like, do you need my support? That's me. But I'm never the one to be like, okay, I need you to come. Like, I'm tired. Um, I need somebody to hear me out. And that's crazy because we need that too. As much as we pour into others, we have to be poured into.
You're so right. I struggle to ask for help. I mean, it's just not in my nature. It's just not, I, children aside, it's just not something that I've ever felt comfortable doing. But you're right. For our own mental health and sanity, we can't do, and as much as we have supportive partners and, you have your mum around, I have my mother-in-law, they're around us a lot of the time. They equally feel the challenges and the struggle, you know, in the daily interactions that they have with our children. Um, but I honestly feel like I don't know. I don't mean to do it, but I feel like I isolate myself also because when it gets so overwhelming, I don't even want to speak on the phone. I can't, like, I'm so drained and so exhausted. I struggle to even articulate the extent of the challenges, right? And I don't want that pity. I don't want people to feel sorry for me. And so I just internalize it. At best, okay, I'll talk to my husband, and that's as far as it goes. So it's like a chicken and egg situation because on one hand, you want the support of that village, but you're not really telling the village what's going on and how they can help, right? So of course they're not going to be they're not going to be around you offering any support because you're not telling them. So I'm still trying to figure out how to, yeah, how
To
to be
get
that
there,
person.
to ask for that
Yeah,
help.
yeah.
But no, this
Sometimes you
has
also feel,
been,
I
what was that?
sorry to interrupt you, Nanny. I was just going to say sometimes I also feel like, do you have to ask though? Like I feel like you don't have if you're a family member or a really good friend, I don't think you have to ask. I'm just, I guess, part of adulting also is to accept that you can't put people on the same pedestal, as you can't judge and treat people the way that you would be in that sort of scenario, right? I know the type of friend that I am. And I know that if someone was in my position, I wouldn't wait for them to ask me anything.
Yes, I
Right?
I I agree with you. No, I agree with you because I feel like especially when you've known the person for a long time, like and their situation and their kid's situation, it's almost like silly to ask. You
Right.
know, so that's I agree with you. I'm with
Yeah.
you 100% on that. Um I think, this has truly been an insightful episode. I mean, we could go on for hours talking about this topic, raising autistic siblings, and I'm sure those that are listening that may be in the same shoes as us, raising autistic siblings, maybe more than two, right?
Hmm. Yes.
But I just want you to know before ending this episode that you were chosen for that. We were chosen to raise autistic children, beautiful children, chosen, fearfully and wonderfully made in the image of God. And I just love it. So I guess to close this episode, what is an advice that you have for parents who may be struggling, and this may be super challenging for them to balance? I know you said, there is no such a thing as balance because we know this, right? But I guess just to word it,
Right.
um to just balance those needs of both of their autistic children, but yet if they have a neurotypical child as well,
Mhm.
like, what is one advice you have for them, since you do live both worlds, so
I
you can
do.
talk about it? I both of
Yes.
mine are autistic, so
Right.
what is that one advice?
I would say, look, allow yourself to go through like touching on what we've already spoken about. Just allow yourself, give yourself grace, and we're only human at the end of the day. There is no manual to doing what we do every day. And so give yourself as much grace as possible, even in the challenging moments. Do the crying, do the moaning, do the complaining, the advocacy, like whatever you need to do, but don't stay there too long, right? It's up to us. We need to find joy. We need to create also those opportunities for joy. And insofar as I think that's where the balance comes into play, right? Insofar as we can create these lives, even if quite a lot of it is outside of our control, we still can. I think what is in our control is to decide how much we choose to focus on the challenging and the negative and the overwhelming aspects over, what is joyous, what brings us happiness, what makes us proud of our children, on a daily basis, if I can achieve that, i.e., if I can just have a joyous moment surpass the other challenges and the negatives, then that's success for me. So that's what I'd say to parents, is just really, really be like intentional about looking for those
Yes,
joyous moments. Yeah.
yes, I love it. I hope you had a great time, being on this
I
podcast.
did. I loved it. Like you said, we
Girl,
can talk
you weren't
forever.
even nervous though. Like, seriously, you weren't even nervous. I mean, I couldn't tell, and I'm sure nobody can.
It's a
But
swan, right? Swan effect. On the outside, you're all composed, and
yes,
on the
I
inside, yeah.
I do the same thing, sis. But I am so grateful that you were able to join us, and my audience. Thank you. Thank you again. And you guys, I will see you again on a special edition episode next week on Thanksgiving. I'm going to have a beautiful devotion on thankfulness, and just you don't want to miss it. So definitely be sure to tune in. Thank you guys again for listening and watching on YouTube. So thank you, Swab.